The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as a young girl, her shoulders squared with quiet confidence, stepped into the bustling cafe. The hum of chatter and clinking cups momentarily paused as some heads turned to glance at her, their expressions ranging from indifferent to subtly judgmental. She walked up to the counter, her voice calm and steady as she placed her order. The barista, a woman with a sharp gaze and a faint smirk curling her lips, eyed her with thinly veiled disdain. "We're out of that," she said curtly, without even glancing at the menu. The girl blinked, her voice unwavering. "The sign says you have it. Could you check again, please?" That single, polite request seemed to ignite a simmering hostility. The barista's voice sharpened. "I said we're out. Maybe you should try somewhere else," she sneered, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. The girl stood her ground, her tone firm but respectful. "I'd appreciate it if you could just double-check. I don't think I've done anything to deserve this." The room seemed to hold its breath. A few customers averted their eyes, others leaned in, curious to see how the exchange would unfold. The barista's smirk widened into something uglier. Without a word, she grabbed a cup of steaming hot coffee and, in one swift motion, flung it directly at the girl's face. A gasp rippled through the cafe. The girl staggered back, her hand instinctively flying to her cheek as the scalding liquid seared her skin. Whispers broke out among the onlookers, some frozen in shock, others fumbling for their phones to capture the aftermath. "What is wrong with you?" someone from the crowd finally shouted. The barista crossed her arms, her expression unrepentant. "Maybe people should learn their place before demanding things they don't deserve," she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. The girl, trembling but refusing to let tears fall, straightened herself. Her voice, though quivering, carried a quiet strength. "You don't know who I am," she said, locking eyes with the barista. "But you're about to find out." The tension in the room was palpable, every eye now fixed on the girl as she turned and walked out of the cafe, her composure a stark contrast to the chaos she left behind. Whispers of the incident began to spread, from the cafe to the surrounding community. Video footage of the altercation surfaced online within hours, sparking outrage and disbelief. But as the world watched, a question hung in the air, unspoken but urgent: what would happen next? The girl's quiet departure was not an admission of defeat. It was the beginning of something far more powerful. Beneath the pain and humiliation burned a resolve that would shake the very foundation of the community, and leave everyone, especially the barista, reeling from the consequences. What no one could predict was the stunning turn of events that would follow, revealing not only the depths of the barista's prejudice but also a shocking truth about the girl that would leave the entire town in disbelief. What could possibly come of this act of hatred? And how would justice finally be served? Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. At Voice of Twist, we stand firmly against all forms of racism, discrimination, or hate. We believe in sharing stories that inspire, empower, and shed light on important issues affecting communities worldwide. To our Black viewers and anyone who's faced prejudice, we see you, we stand with you, and we will always use this platform to advocate for justice and equality. Now, sit back and get ready for an impactful story full of twists and lessons. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Let's dive in. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of a modest suburban home, casting soft golden lines across the walls. Maya Bennett stirred in her room, a small sanctuary of books, photographs, and handwritten notes tacked onto a corkboard. At 16, Maya was the embodiment of determination. Her deep brown eyes carried the weight of a young woman who had faced more challenges than most people her age. Her cocoa-colored skin, radiant and smooth, reflected her mother's pride in their heritage, and her thick, coiled hair was tied neatly into a puff, revealing her confident demeanor. Maya lived with her father, James Bennett, a man whose presence commanded respect. As the mayor of their small town, James was not just a public figure but a symbol of resilience and progress for the black community. He was the first black mayor in a town with a history of deeply rooted prejudices, and while his tenure brought hope to many, it also unearthed hostility from those resistant to change. The Bennett's house was warm and welcoming, filled with photographs chronicling their journey as a family. Maya's late mother, Angela, had always been the heart of their home, her absence still felt in every corner. Angela's wisdom lived on in Maya, whose passion for justice and equality mirrored her parents' values. James, despite his demanding role, always found time to support Maya's aspirations. He was her rock, her example of strength in adversity. It was a Sunday morning when the story began to take its fateful turn. Maya had planned to spend the day at the library preparing for a debate competition. She was known for her sharp wit and eloquence, traits that often left her competitors struggling to keep up. The topic of the upcoming debate was systemic inequality in modern society, a subject Maya felt deeply connected to. She believed that change began with conversations, and she was determined to make her voice heard. After a quick breakfast, she hugged her father goodbye and set off on foot to the library. The streets of the town, though picturesque with their neatly trimmed lawns and quaint shops, held a veneer of civility that sometimes masked the undercurrents of intolerance. Maya had learned to navigate these waters carefully, aware that her every move was scrutinized. Her destination was a cafe near the library. Maya loved this place, not for the coffee, but for its location. It was a spot where she could sit by the window, sip a hot drink, and watch the world go by as she worked on her debate notes. She entered the cafe with her usual quiet confidence, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Behind the counter stood Rachel Green, a woman in her mid-30s with a permanent air of irritation. Rachel's blonde hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and her sharp blue eyes scanned every customer with a mixture of impatience and judgment. She had worked at the cafe for years, known for her brisk demeanor and lack of tolerance for anything that disrupted her sense of order. Rachel prided herself on running a tight ship, but her underlying biases often bled through in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. Rachel's irritation spiked the moment Maya stepped up to the counter. She didn't like Maya, not for anything the girl had done, but simply because she represented something Rachel had spent her life resenting. Maya's confidence, her intelligence, and her very presence seemed to challenge Rachel's deeply held, though unacknowledged, prejudices. "What can I get for you?" Rachel asked, her tone flat and cold. Maya glanced at the menu. "A medium caramel latte, please." Rachel's lips tightened. "We're out of that." Maya blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Oh. The sign says you have it. Could you check again, please?" Rachel's jaw clenched. There was something about Maya's calmness that unnerved her, as if the girl wasn't taking the hint to leave. "I already told you," Rachel snapped, her voice rising slightly. "We're out." The cafe fell silent. A few customers turned their heads, sensing the tension. Maya, refusing to be rattled, met Rachel's gaze. "I just wanted to double-check. If it's not available, that's fine." The simple request seemed to set something off in Rachel. Her face hardened, and without another word, she grabbed a cup of steaming coffee and flung it at Maya. The liquid splashed across her face and chest, scalding her skin. Maya staggered back, gasping in pain and disbelief. The cafe erupted in murmurs, phones being pulled out to record the scene. Rachel's voice cut through the noise, her words dripping with venom. "Maybe people like you should learn their place." Maya's hand flew to her cheek, her skin already reddening from the burn. Her breath was shaky, but she didn't cry. Instead, she straightened her posture, her voice steady though low. "You don't know who I am," she said, her eyes locking onto Rachel's. "But you're about to find out." With that, Maya turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind a stunned silence. Customers whispered among themselves, some expressing outrage, others too stunned to react. One older woman stood and approached Rachel. "What's wrong with you?" she demanded. That girl did nothing to deserve this. Rachel dismissed the comment with a wave of her hand. She's just looking for attention. But the customers weren't convinced. Someone had captured the entire exchange on video, and the footage was already being uploaded online. The whispers of what had happened spread quickly, and by the time Maya returned home, the incident had gone viral. James Bennett sat in his office, reviewing paperwork, when his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with messages and links, all pointing to the same video. His hands trembled as he watched the footage, the sight of his daughter's pain igniting a fury he hadn't felt in years. But as a mayor and a father, James knew that his response had to be measured, calculated. This wasn't just about Maya, it was about the bigger picture, the fight for justice and dignity. Meanwhile, Maya retreated to her room, her face still stinging but her resolve stronger than ever. She knew this wasn't over. The burn marks on her skin were temporary, but the scars of humiliation cut deeper. And yet, she refused to be a victim. Maya was determined to turn this moment of pain into a catalyst for change. As the sun set on the town, the cafe incident had become the talk of every home, every street corner. The question on everyone's lips was the same: what would happen next? For Maya, Rachel, and the town itself, the fallout was just beginning. The morning after the cafe incident, Maya woke up with a dull ache in her face and a sharper one in her heart. The burn was manageable, thanks to the ointment her father had gently applied the night before, but the humiliation lingered. She stared at herself in the mirror, touching the red marks that traced her cheek and collarbone. It wasn't the physical pain that hurt the most, it was the memory of Rachel's smirk, the cruel words, and the stunned silence of the cafe. Maya didn't cry, not anymore. Tears had no place here. This was about something bigger now. Downstairs, James was already on the phone. His voice, low and steady, carried a tone of restrained fury. "Yes, I've seen the footage," he said, pacing the living room. "No, we won't make any rash moves yet. I need all the details before we proceed." When Maya appeared at the top of the stairs, James ended the call and turned to her. "Good morning," he said, his tone softening immediately. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," Maya replied, though the weight in her voice suggested otherwise. James motioned for her to join him on the couch. He studied her for a moment, his brow furrowed. "Maya, this isn't just about what happened to you. This is about how we respond. You're not just my daughter, you're someone people look up to, even if they don't say it. What we do next matters." Maya nodded. "I know, Dad. And I'm not backing down. She can't get away with this." "She won't," James assured her. "But we have to be smart. There's already a lot of attention on this. The wrong move could backfire." Maya's phone buzzed on the table, pulling their attention. The screen lit up with countless notifications, texts, social media tags, and messages from friends and classmates. Among them were messages of support, but also hateful comments and attempts to downplay what had happened. Maya felt a pang of anger as she read through them. One message stood out, a text from her best friend, "Leah, you're trending. Everyone's talking about it. Call me when you can." "I need to go to school," Maya said abruptly, standing up. "Maya, you don't have to." "I do," she interrupted. "I'm not going to hide." James hesitated but saw the determination in her eyes. "Okay," he said finally. "But if anything happens, you call me. Immediately." As Maya walked through the school's main doors, the usual chatter in the halls quieted. People glanced at her, some with sympathy, others with curiosity. Leah met her by her locker, her face a mix of concern and admiration. "Are you okay?" Leah asked, pulling her into a quick hug. "I'm fine," Maya replied. "But I'm not in the mood for pity." Leah smirked. "Good. Because you're basically a celebrity right now. Everyone saw the video." Maya rolled her eyes. "Great. That's exactly what I needed. They made their way to class, but the whispers followed Maya everywhere. During lunch, a group of students approached her. One of them, a boy named Jake, spoke up. "Hey, Maya. What happened to you was messed up. If you need anything, let us know." Maya nodded, appreciating the gesture. But not everyone shared Jake's sentiment. Across the cafeteria, a girl named Emily, known for her biting remarks, muttered loud enough for Maya to hear. Maybe she was looking for attention. People like her always are. Maya clenched her fists but chose not to respond. Leah, however, wasn't as restrained. "What the hell is your problem, Emily?" she snapped. Maya didn't do anything wrong. Emily shrugged, feigning innocence. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." Maya stood, her voice calm but firm. "If you have something to say, Emily, say it to my face. But be careful, your ignorance is showing." The cafeteria went silent, and Emily flushed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Maya walked away, leaving Leah grinning behind her. Later that evening, James received a call from the cafe's owner, Mr. Hargrove. His voice was strained, clearly uncomfortable. "Mayor Bennett, I want to apologize for what happened to your daughter. Rachel's behavior was unacceptable." James's response was measured. "I appreciate your apology, but words aren't enough. What steps are you taking to address this?" Mr. Hargrove hesitated. "We've suspended Rachel pending an investigation. I assure you, we're taking this very seriously." "That's a start," James replied, though his tone suggested it wasn't enough. "But this isn't just about Rachel. This is about the culture you allow in your establishment." "I understand," Mr. Hargrove said quickly. "We'll be implementing training for all employees. Diversity, sensitivity, the whole thing." James ended the call, shaking his head. "Suspended," he muttered to himself. "That's it?" Maya overheard him and approached. "What did he say?" "They suspended her," James said. "But it's not enough." Maya's jaw tightened. "Then we make it enough." Over the next few days, the community's response grew louder. Local news stations picked up the story, and activists began organizing protests outside the cafe. Maya, though overwhelmed, remained composed. She gave a statement to the press, her voice steady and resolute. "No one deserves to be treated the way I was," she said. "This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's ever been made to feel less than because of the color of their skin. This has to stop." Rachel, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. She tried to lay low, but the video of her actions had spread far and wide. Strangers flooded her social media with angry comments, and even some of her closest friends began to distance themselves. One evening, Rachel sat in her small apartment, her hands trembling as she read through the messages on her phone. One stood out: "People like you don't belong here anymore." The irony wasn't lost on her. But as Rachel's world began to crumble, the Bennetts' resolve only grew stronger. James worked tirelessly, meeting with community leaders and planning a town hall to address the systemic issues that had allowed this incident to happen. Maya, despite the weight of it all, refused to back down. As the town braced for the upcoming meeting, tensions reached a boiling point. The cafe remained closed, its windows boarded up, and the whispers of what would happen next grew louder. And then, just days before the town hall, something unexpected happened. A piece of information surfaced, something about Rachel, about her past, that sent shockwaves through the community. Maya and James were the first to hear about it, and as they sat together in their living room, the weight of what they'd learned settled over them. "This changes everything," James said, his voice low. Maya nodded, her eyes narrowing. "It's time to let everyone know who she really is." The stage was set, the players in place, and the curtain was about to rise on a revelation that would leave the entire town reeling. The night of the town hall meeting arrived with a buzz of tension that seemed to crackle in the air. The community center, usually a quiet space for yoga classes and bake sales, was now packed to the brim. Rows of folding chairs were filled with residents, reporters, and local activists. Cameras from nearby news stations were set up at the back of the room, their lenses focused on the stage where a panel of speakers sat, including James Bennett and Maya. Maya scanned the crowd from her seat, her stomach knotting with a mix of nerves and determination. She could see familiar faces, her teachers, classmates, and even Leah, who gave her a discreet thumbs up from the second row. At the far corner of the room, Rachel sat with her arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. The whispers in the room grew louder as people noticed her presence. James tapped the microphone, silencing the room. His voice, steady and authoritative, carried across the space. "Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to address a matter that goes beyond a single incident. It's about the values we stand for as a community." He paused, letting his words settle. "But before we begin, I'd like to invite someone up who can speak to this experience better than anyone else, my daughter, Maya Bennett." The crowd erupted into applause as Maya stood and approached the microphone. She felt the weight of their expectations, but she also felt their support. Clearing her throat, she began. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves. "A few days ago, something happened to me that I wouldn't wish on anyone. I was humiliated, degraded, and treated as if I didn't belong. But I'm not here to talk about my pain. I'm here to talk about what we do with it." She glanced at Rachel, whose expression didn't waver. Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. "This isn't just about me. This is about everyone who's ever felt invisible, disrespected, or less than because of who they are. And it's about holding people accountable, not just individuals, but systems that allow this kind of behavior to thrive." The room erupted in applause again, but this time, a voice cut through the noise. It was Rachel, standing now, her face red with indignation. "Oh, give me a break," she said loudly. "This is just a witch hunt. All I did was refuse to serve a rude customer." The crowd gasped, and murmurs spread like wildfire. Maya turned to face Rachel, her calm demeanor unwavering. "You didn't just refuse to serve me. You threw coffee at me. You told me to learn my place. That's not just rude, it's hateful." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Maybe if you weren't so entitled, things wouldn't have escalated. People like you think you can get away with anything." That phrase, "people like you," hung in the air, heavier than ever. James leaned into the microphone. "Rachel Green, your actions weren't just disrespectful. They were rooted in prejudice. And tonight, everyone here will understand just how deep that prejudice runs." Rachel scoffed. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Ruin my life because of one mistake?" James's expression darkened, his voice sharp. "Your actions weren't a mistake, they were a pattern. And the community deserves to know who you really are." The tension in the room was palpable as James gestured to a screen behind him. A video began to play, showing Rachel in another cafe, years earlier, berating an employee. The footage, grainy but clear enough, captured her using slurs and shouting at a young black man. Gasps filled the room as the video cut to another clip of Rachel being escorted out of a department store after a similar incident. Maya watched Rachel's face closely. For the first time, the woman seemed to falter. This isn't fair," Rachel stammered. "Those things happened years ago. They have nothing to do with this." James leaned forward, his tone cutting. "It has everything to do with this. You've shown time and time again that your prejudice isn't a one-time lapse in judgment, it's a pattern of behavior. And it stops now." Rachel's face turned crimson as the crowd murmured in shock. A woman in the back stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "I knew I recognized you. You harassed my nephew when he worked at the mall. You made his life hell." Another person chimed in. She called my cousin a slur at a diner 2 years ago. She's always been like this. Rachel's defiance began to crumble as accusations piled on. She looked around, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for a defense that wouldn't come. This isn't right, she said weakly. You're ruining my life. Maya stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. No, Rachel. You're facing the consequences of your actions. This isn't about ruining your life, it's about making sure people like you don't ruin others. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound deafening. Rachel sank back into her seat, her head bowed as the weight of her actions finally seemed to hit her. James took the microphone again, his voice steady. Let this be a turning point for our community. We can't change the past, but we can decide what kind of future we want. And that future starts with accountability and justice. The room rose to its feet, the applause thunderous. Maya stood beside her father, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and determination. This wasn't just her victory, it was a victory for everyone who had ever been silenced or dismissed. But even as the meeting ended and the crowd began to disperse, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Change was slow, and it would take more than one night to uproot the deeply embedded prejudices that plagued their town. Still, she felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to smile. The room began to empty, but the energy lingered like an electrical charge. Maya stayed near the stage, talking quietly with her father while the remaining crowd milled around, some still processing what had just unfolded. Rachel remained seated in the corner, her hands gripping the edges of her chair as though letting go would make everything collapse around her. James noticed Rachel before Maya did. He touched his daughter's shoulder and nodded in Rachel's direction. She hasn't left. Maya turned, her gaze locking onto Rachel's. The woman looked smaller now, her earlier defiance worn down to something closer to fear or shame. Maya hesitated before speaking. Should we say something? James tilted his head slightly. What do you want to say? Maya's thoughts swirled. Part of her wanted to leave Rachel sitting there to stew in her guilt and humiliation. But another part, the part that reflected her father's steady resolve and her mother's compassion, couldn't ignore the opportunity. She nodded. I think I should. James didn't stop her. Instead, he stood back, watching as Maya crossed the room. The chatter around them faded as people noticed the confrontation about to happen. Rachel looked up when Maya stopped a few feet away. Her expression shifted, defensive, then uncertain. What? She snapped, though her voice lacked its usual edge. Maya folded her arms, keeping her voice even. You're still here. Rachel snorted. Where else am I supposed to go? Half the town probably hates me now. Maybe you should think about why, Maya replied. Rachel's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, she seemed ready to lash out again. But instead, she slumped in her chair, rubbing her temples. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she muttered. Maya's eyebrows lifted. Didn't mean for what to go this far? Throwing coffee in my face? Humiliating me in front of a room full of people? Or all the other times you've done this to someone else? Rachel looked away, her lips pressing into a thin line. I didn't think it would blow up like this, she said finally. I was having a bad day. A bad day, Maya repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. That's your excuse. I'm not excusing it, Rachel snapped, though her tone was more defensive than angry. I'm just. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want excuses, Maya said, stepping closer. Her voice softened, but her words carried a weight that made Rachel look up. I want you to understand. I want you to see how much damage you've done, not just to me, but to every person you've ever treated like they didn't matter. Rachel's face crumpled slightly, her defenses slipping. You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel it now? Everyone hates me. I've lost my job, my friends, my reputation, everything. Maya's voice sharpened. You've lost things because of your own choices. The rest of us? We lose things because people like you think you're entitled to take them from us. Rachel blinked rapidly, as if trying to keep tears at bay. I didn't mean for this to happen, she repeated weakly. Maya let the silence stretch between them for a moment before speaking again. You're right. You didn't mean for it to happen to you. But you didn't care about what might happen to me, or anyone else, until it affected you. Rachel swallowed hard, looking down at her hands. For the first time, she seemed to have no retort, no way to deflect the truth staring her in the face. The room around them had grown quiet, the few remaining people watching the exchange intently. James stepped forward then, his voice calm but firm. Rachel, it's time to ask yourself a hard question. Are you upset because you've been held accountable, or because you're starting to understand the pain you've caused? Rachel glanced at him, her eyes flickering with something between anger and guilt. It's not that simple, she said, her voice shaking. It never is, James replied. But change never happens if you keep hiding behind excuses. Maya took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. She looked at Rachel again, her expression unreadable. You're going to have to live with this, Rachel. I hope you use it to be better, not bitter. But that's up to you. Rachel stared at her, her face pale and drawn. She didn't respond, and after a moment, Maya turned and walked back to her father. The onlookers began to disperse, murmuring amongst themselves. Some glanced at Rachel as they left, their expressions ranging from pity to disdain. Outside, the cool night air felt like a relief against Maya's skin. She took a deep breath, glancing up at the stars. Do you think she'll change? She asked James quietly. James considered her question. I don't know, he admitted. That's something only she can decide. But you've done your part, Maya. You stood up for yourself, and for others. That's more than most people would have the courage to do. Maya nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. I hope it was enough. James smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It was. Trust me. As they walked toward the car, Maya noticed Leah waiting near the parking lot. Her friend grinned and jogged over. You were amazing in there, Leah said, pulling Maya into a quick hug. Seriously, I've never been prouder to know you. Thanks, Maya said, her lips curving into a small smile. But it's not over yet. Leah tilted her head. What do you mean? Maya glanced back at the community center, her expression thoughtful. It's one thing to call out the problem. It's another to fix it. There's still a lot of work to do. Leah nodded, her grin softening into something more serious. Well, whatever comes next, you're not doing it alone. Maya smiled, the warmth of her friend's support grounding her. As they drove home that night, she felt a flicker of hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility that her actions might spark something bigger than she could imagine. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to believe that change, however slow, was finally within reach. As the community center doors closed behind them, the aftermath of the meeting began to ripple outward, affecting everyone who had been present. Maya and James drove home in near silence, the weight of the evening heavy between them. For Maya, the confrontation with Rachel had felt both empowering and exhausting. She had spoken her truth, stood her ground, but the echoes of the encounter lingered in her mind. Could someone like Rachel really change, or was this just another storm to weather before the cycle began again? At school the next day, the tension was palpable. Maya's classmates approached her cautiously, their curiosity mingled with admiration. Some offered words of support, while others seemed unsure of what to say. Leah, as always, remained by her side, her presence a steadying force. You're, like, a legend now, Leah said as they walked through the halls. I overheard Mrs. Carson talking about you in the teacher's lounge. She said you showed more composure than most adults she knows. Maya smiled faintly. It doesn't feel that way. Honestly, I'm still trying to process everything. Leah tilted her head, studying her friend. You did what needed to be done, Maya. Not just for yourself but for everyone who's ever been in your shoes. That's huge. Maya nodded but didn't reply. The weight of responsibility that Leah's words implied was something she hadn't fully considered. She had been so focused on the immediate fallout, Rachel's exposure, the town's reaction, that she hadn't yet thought about the larger implications of what had happened. Later that afternoon, James received an unexpected phone call. It was from Mr. Hargrove, the owner of the cafe where the incident had taken place. His voice, though polite, carried a nervous edge. Mayor Bennett, I hope I'm not interrupting your day, Mr. Hargrove began. Not at all, James replied, his tone measured. What can I do for you? There was a pause on the other end of the line before Mr. Hargrove spoke again. I wanted to let you know that I've decided to let Rachel go. Permanently. It wasn't an easy decision, but after everything that's come to light, I can't in good conscience keep her employed. James nodded, though the news didn't surprise him. I appreciate you taking that step. It's the right thing to do. There's more, Mr. Hargrove added hesitantly. I've also decided to partner with a local organization to provide diversity and sensitivity training for all my employees. I know it won't undo what's been done, but I want to ensure that something like this never happens again. For the first time in days, James allowed himself a small smile. That's a step in the right direction, Mr. Hargrove. Thank you for taking this seriously. After ending the call, James found Maya in the living room, hunched over her laptop. She was reading through comments on a news article about the town hall meeting, her expression unreadable. How are you holding up? James asked, sitting beside her. Maya sighed, closing her laptop. It's a lot. Some of the comments are encouraging. But others, she trailed off, shaking her head. James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. People will always have opinions, Maya. But what matters is the truth, and the impact of your actions. You've already started a conversation that needed to happen. Maya looked at him, her eyes searching his face. Do you think it'll last? The change, I mean. James considered her question carefully. Change is slow, Maya. It doesn't happen overnight. But every step forward matters, no matter how small. And you've taken a big step. Maya nodded, though doubt still lingered in her heart. The truth was, she wanted to believe in the possibility of change, but the reality of it felt so daunting. She had seen too many instances where promises of progress fizzled out, leaving things exactly as they were. Meanwhile, Rachel's life had taken a sharp turn. The cafe's decision to fire her had made headlines, and her name was now synonymous with intolerance. She avoided public places, afraid of the judgmental stares and whispered conversations that seemed to follow her everywhere. Even her closest friends had distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Sitting alone in her apartment, Rachel stared at her phone, scrolling through articles and social media posts about the incident. The comments were brutal, each one a reminder of how far she had fallen. She felt a pang of anger, but beneath it was something deeper, shame. For the first time, she began to question not just the events of that day but the patterns of behavior that had led her there. It was late in the evening when Rachel made a decision. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called before. It rang twice before a voice answered. Hello, this is the Bennett residence, James said. Rachel hesitated, her heart pounding. It's Rachel Green. I need to talk to Maya. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, James replied, I'll see if she's willing to speak with you. Hold on. Maya's first reaction was shock when her father told her who was on the phone. She wants to talk to me. Why? She didn't say, James replied. It's up to you, Maya. You don't have to take the call. Maya hesitated, then nodded. I'll talk to her. She picked up the phone, her voice guarded. This is Maya. Maya, Rachel began, her voice unsteady. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to say something. Maya's grip on the phone tightened. Go on. Rachel took a deep breath. I'm sorry. For what I did to you. For the things I said. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. Maya was silent for a moment, her thoughts racing. Finally, she replied, Why now? Because I can't stop thinking about it, Rachel admitted. About how wrong I was. And about the damage I've caused, not just to you but to others. I've been trying to convince myself that I was justified, but the truth is, I wasn't. I was cruel, and I'm sorry. Maya felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a flicker of something resembling empathy. It's not enough to say you're sorry, Rachel. Words don't change what you did. I know, Rachel said quickly. But I want to do more. I've been looking into organizations that work on racial justice. I want to help. I want to learn. I know it won't erase what I've done, but I need to start somewhere. Maya didn't respond immediately. She had spent so much time imagining what she would say to Rachel if given the chance, but now that the moment had come, the words felt inadequate. Finally, she said, It's not about erasing the past. It's about being better in the future. Rachel's voice was soft. I'll try. I promise. When the call ended, Maya sat in silence, her mind swirling with thoughts. She didn't know if Rachel would follow through on her promise, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility that even someone like Rachel could change. The days following Rachel's unexpected call felt like uncharted territory for Maya. The anger she had carried since the incident hadn't dissipated, but it had softened, leaving room for something more complicated, a mix of curiosity and cautious optimism. Could someone like Rachel really change? Could her apology signal the beginning of something meaningful, or was it just another hollow attempt to salvage her reputation? Maya wrestled with these questions as she walked into the community library one afternoon. The debate competition was still weeks away, but she wanted to prepare. The familiar smell of books and the quiet hum of distant conversations grounded her, giving her a sense of normalcy. She found a table by the window, opened her laptop, and started typing, her fingers moving instinctively across the keys. She was halfway through an outline when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Leah, You've got to see this. Check your email. Maya frowned, pulling up her inbox. The subject line of Leah's email read, Rachel Green. Her stomach tightened as she opened the message. Inside was a link to a video and a single line from Leah, She wasn't lying. The video, posted on a community group's social media page, showed Rachel at a local food bank, wearing a volunteer apron and sorting boxes of supplies. The caption read, Everyone can change if they're willing to try. Thank you, Rachel, for stepping up and giving back. Maya stared at the screen, unsure of how to feel. Was this genuine? Or was it just a public relations move? She played the video again, studying Rachel's face. There was no trace of the defensive woman she had confronted at the cafe. Instead, Rachel looked different. Tired, maybe, but also purposeful. Maya closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, lost in thought. That evening, Maya shared the video with her father. James watched it silently, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he set his phone down and turned to her. What do you think? I don't know, Maya admitted. Part of me wants to believe she's trying. But the other part, she hesitated. The other part thinks this might just be damage control. James nodded thoughtfully. It could be. Or it could be the first step in something real. People don't change overnight, Maya. But sometimes, they do change. Maya sighed, running a hand through her hair. I guess I just don't know how to trust it. How to trust her? You don't have to, James said gently. Trust isn't something that can be forced. It's earned, and that takes time. What matters is that you focus on your own path, not hers. The conversation stayed with Maya as she lay awake that night. She thought about everything that had happened, from the scalding coffee to the town hall meeting to Rachel's call. The memory of Rachel's voice, shaken, sincere, echoed in her mind. Was it possible that Rachel's regret was genuine? And if it was, did that change anything? The next morning, Maya received another surprise. A letter arrived in the mail, addressed to her. Inside was a handwritten note. Maya, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I wanted to tell you again how sorry I am. Volunteering at the food bank has opened my eyes to things I've ignored for far too long. I'm learning, slowly, but I still have a long way to go. I hope one day I can prove to you, and to myself, that I'm better than the person I've been. Sincerely, Rachel Green. Maya read the letter twice, her emotions swirling. She wasn't sure what she had expected from Rachel, but this wasn't it. The letter felt raw, almost vulnerable, and for the first time, Maya found herself wondering if Rachel's journey might be real after all. Later that week, Maya attended another community event with her father, a panel discussion on systemic inequality. The room was packed, the audience engaged as speakers shared their experiences and solutions. Maya sat quietly, absorbing the stories of others who had faced discrimination and overcome it. The event was both sobering and inspiring, a reminder that change was possible but required effort from everyone involved. After the panel ended, Maya was approached by one of the speakers, a woman named Teresa who had shared a powerful story about her own experiences with prejudice. You're Maya Bennett, right? Teresa asked, smiling warmly. Yes, Maya replied, a little surprised. I am. I've heard about what happened at the cafe, Teresa said. And about how you handled it. You're an inspiration, Maya. It takes a lot of courage to stand up the way you did. Maya felt a flush of pride but also a twinge of discomfort. Thank you, she said. But it's not just about me. There's so much more work to do. Exactly, Teresa agreed. And you're already doing it. Your story has sparked conversations all over town. People are paying attention, and that's the first step toward change. As Teresa walked away, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that her actions had already made an impact, even if she couldn't see it immediately. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that the change she had fought for might actually be within reach. Back at home, James found her sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open but untouched. Everything okay? He asked, setting down his briefcase. Maya nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. Yeah. I think things are starting to get better. James sat down across from her, his expression softening. That's because of you, Maya. Your strength, your voice, it's made people listen. Maya looked at her father, her smile widening. Maybe. But it's not just me. It's everyone who's willing to speak up and do the work. That's how real change happens. James reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I'm proud of you, Maya. More than you'll ever know. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt a sense of peace. She knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. With her father by her side, her community beginning to wake up, and even Rachel trying to make amends, Maya felt ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and the town began to feel the ripple effects of what had happened at the cafe. The incident, which had initially divided the community, became a catalyst for broader conversations about equality, empathy, and accountability. Schools introduced programs focused on diversity and inclusion, local businesses committed to anti-bias training, and the voices of those who had long been ignored grew louder and more unified. The change wasn't instant, and it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was lasting. Maya flourished in the wake of these transformations. She won her debate competition, her argument on systemic inequality bolstered by her personal experiences. Her confidence deepened, not just in herself but in her ability to affect change. She became a sought-after speaker at community events, her words inspiring others to take action in their own lives. But Maya never let the attention go to her head. She remained grounded, focusing on her studies and her friendships, with Leah always cheering her on from the sidelines. James, too, saw the fruits of his labor. His leadership during the crisis earned him respect even from those who had once doubted him. Under his guidance, the town implemented new policies aimed at promoting equity and justice. James's quiet strength and dedication to doing what was right, even when it was difficult, became a model for others to follow. And then there was Rachel Green. Her journey was far from easy. She lost more than her job. She lost the life she had known, the comfort of denial, and the privilege of going unnoticed. But Rachel didn't give up. She continued volunteering at the food bank and eventually enrolled in workshops on anti-racism and restorative justice. The process was painful and humbling, forcing her to confront the harm she had caused. Over time, Rachel began to rebuild, not her reputation, but her understanding of the world and her place in it. One day, Rachel reached out to Maya again, this time with a different tone. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she didn't try to explain herself. Instead, she thanked Maya. "You didn't owe me anything," Rachel wrote in a letter. "But by standing up to me, you made me see what I couldn't, or wouldn't, see before. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better, not because I want recognition, but because it's the right thing to do." Maya read the letter carefully, her emotions a mix of lingering hurt and cautious hope. She didn't respond immediately, she needed time to process. But eventually, she found herself writing back, her words measured but sincere. "Change isn't easy, Rachel," she wrote. "But it's necessary. If you're serious about being better, then I hope you find the strength to follow through. Not for me, but for yourself, and for everyone else who deserves better." The exchange was a quiet turning point, a moment of closure for both of them. Maya didn't forgive Rachel outright, but she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of redemption, even for someone like her. As the seasons changed, so did the town. The cafe where it all began reopened under new management, its walls adorned with art from local creators, celebrating the diversity of the community. Maya walked past it one day, her heart light as she saw a group of children laughing together inside. The memory of that painful day still lingered, but it no longer defined her. In a final gesture of empowerment, Maya created a mentorship program for young girls in the community, focusing on leadership, self-esteem, and advocacy. The program, named after her late mother, Angela, became a beacon of hope for many. Maya found joy in guiding others, knowing that her struggles had paved the way for something meaningful. For James, the sight of his daughter thriving was the ultimate reward. He watched with pride as Maya stood at the front of a packed auditorium, delivering a keynote speech about resilience and the power of standing up for what's right. As she spoke, James felt the weight of everything they had endured together, and the strength that had carried them through. Rachel, too, found her own version of redemption. She became a vocal advocate for racial justice, using her story as an example of how ignorance can be unlearned and accountability embraced. While not everyone welcomed her efforts, Rachel remained steadfast, knowing that her actions spoke louder than words. The story of what happened in that small town became a reminder that change is possible, even in the face of deep-seated prejudice. It wasn't a perfect story, nor was it an easy one, but it was real, and it showed that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, transforming not just individuals but entire communities. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on this journey. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where standing up for what's right felt impossible? What did you learn from it? Maya's story reminds us that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about acting despite your fears. It's about using your voice, even when it shakes. And sometimes, it's about planting seeds of change, knowing you might not see them grow, but trusting that they will. What would you have done in Maya's shoes? Or in Rachel's? How do we hold ourselves accountable for our actions while also allowing space for growth and redemption? Share your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear your perspective. And if you found this story inspiring, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us here at Tales of Twist. We're dedicated to bringing you stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us all of the power of the human spirit. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.